Right. Well, welcome to the International Full Throat Timeline. Right. Well, welcome to the International Full Throat Timeline. My picture is about 10 seconds behind what I'm actually saying. I want to get rid of the echo. Right. I think I've got rid of the solved the problems we had last week. I was told by one viewer that the sound is very sort of tinny and up too close. The other thing is that I tend to have these coughs quite a lot. Anytime I cough with this equipment, it amplifies tenfold, so it sounds really horrible. I'll try not to cough tonight. Right, I think we've got. Not sure how many we've got actually. I'll mute that. Right, can you still actually hear me? I've got 5 watching apparently. Hopefully it's 5 rather than 4 and 1. Okay. Right. Well, there's no set format for this this broadcast. Feel free at any time to ask me any questions you want. A couple of things. I'll wait till I get some more viewers, but I've got a couple of things I wanted to sort out. The main thing in the news at the moment is, of course, this Kavanaugh circus. It's really disgusting what the Democrats are doing. I made a short video of it, which you'll find on my on my channel. I've made a short video of it. The consensus appears to be 6. a record. I made a short video of it. The consensus appears to be that Kavanaugh's first accuser and perhaps his second accuser deserve to be heard. My position is no, they don't deserve to be heard. As I've stated before, the whole bit about historical allegations is that they're almost impossible to refute, and certainly if they are vague. I mean, Kavanaugh's accuser, the first one, Dr. Ford, her allegations are so vague that how can anybody? Well, they can't be refuted because if the party is identified, you just claim there's a different party, or nobody else saw what happened. This is the major reason we need a statute of limitations to stop this sort of nonsense. I think I will. No, we're down to 5 now. I think I will discuss a little bit about this bogus theory of trauma, which is supposed to be responsible for women delaying reporting, on occasion men. The reality is that a reasonably intelligent, educated woman, a woman over whom the man she accuses has no sort of hold, has absolutely no valid excuse for delaying reporting. What does happen? Well, several things happen. One is that women have consensual allegations, and they rewrite the consensual encounters with men, perhaps after a few drinks with men they wouldn't touch with a barge pole, and they rewrite these encounters in their brains as non-consensual, as rape or some sort of forced sex. Another thing that they do, malicious women, is simply invent rape allegations. Some of these allegations are purely imaginary. There's been no sex, consensual or otherwise. And a third is that you do have genuine false memories. But my position is that the vast majority of these delayed allegations are not women who have false memories. They're women who are simply lying. They lie to seek attention, to damage men they don't like, or a man they've taken a particular dislike to, perhaps after having sex. And the evidence for this is utterly compelling. Now, I'm not saying that no woman ever delays reporting rape. Certainly not less than that. Part of the standard fare is that the overwhelming majority of survivors, so-called, don't report. This is not true. Now, let me. One of the things they do here is they conflate sexual assault, which may be indecent assault, which might be something like touching, maybe as innocuous as a drunk slapping a woman's backside in a public house or bar. What the rape crisis movement and others do is they talk about rape and they talk about sexual assault, and they conflate the two. Now, there may be many reasons why a woman would not report a sexual assault ever, a minor crime. Also, there are all sorts of hypothetical scenarios, not just sexual assault, indecent assault, all sorts of crimes. If you are a motorist, for example, and somebody scratches a car, usually done with a key, deliberately, or if somebody breaks into your car and steals something of not much value, you may not report that. You probably wouldn't report it to the insurance company because you would be in danger of losing your no claims bonus. Also, reporting trivial crimes is a lot of hassle. For example, let's imagine a woman is on holiday in a club and a guy gropes her. Perhaps it's quite a serious grope. Now, what she would have done at one time was slap his face or hit him where it hurts. But let's imagine that she's going home in a day or two. Is she really going to report this, get the guy arrested? Then if he pleads not guilty, she's going to have to, maybe she's 200 or 300 miles away, maybe she's on a different continent. There are all sorts of scenarios in which a woman would not report sexual assault, an indecent assault, call it what you want. But a rape isn't like that. Rape is triable only on indictment. Rape requires physical force. I mean, quite a lot of force. Obviously, if a woman is sober and aware of herself, it requires quite a lot of force. And yet we're led to believe by the rape crisis women, I just froze. I was afraid to resist in case it killed me. This is complete bull. Again, maybe a minority of a very small minority of cases, but for the vast majority, this isn't true. Most genuine rapes are reported. They're reported swiftly, if not absolutely immediately, then certainly within a few hours. I'm subject to the woman being not locked in some guy's basement, obviously. And you'll find that most genuine rapes result in either a guilty plea or a guilty plea to something, or to a scenario in which it isn't really, in which the defendant doesn't have a lot of hope. I'd like to give a couple of examples of what can happen, what could happen if a rape allegation is delayed. Now, I'll just go to the timeline and open up. You'll find this is the case of Andrew Bond I'm talking about here. Here we are. Now, Andrew Bond was a student. This was June 2001. Andrew Bond was a student, and he went to a bar or a pub. I think it was a bar. He picked up a young woman. They went back to his apartment, and they had sex. And she wasn't very happy with that. She left his apartment. She went to a relative living nearby, and she claimed to have been raped. The police were called, and Mr. Bond was arrested. He was actually charged with rape. What happened next was quite incredible. He lived in, I'll say, a block of flats, and at the last minute, the prosecution gave disclosure of CCTV tape from the elevators. You know, most elevators have a mirror in them. And what happened was oh my God, what's happened here? Oh dear, that's so. Are you still with me? No, I think we were right. Yeah, I think we were right. What happened was they gave disclosure at the last minute, and so elevators have a mirror in them, and a paralegal, a lady named Julie Wardill, found it was an image not of the woman herself, but in the mirror. She undid her handbag, and she tore her knickers, which were in her handbag. And the prosecution was shown that, and they dropped the case. Now, you can imagine what would have happened if she'd delayed for a year, or maybe 2 years. Would the CCTV still be in there? Almost certainly not. There are many, many, many cases like this on the Full Soap timeline. You have to ask the question, before CCTV was as common as it is, and mobile phones and similar, you have to ask the question, how many innocent men were not believed and ended up doing lengthy prison sentences? Some of the rape allegations are, you wouldn't credit, unless you had strong corroborating evidence, you wouldn't believe the defense. This is one of my favorites. Again, this is on the Full Soap timeline. This was June the 10th, 2007. In Wolverhampton, a woman named Kerry Thomas was dining in an Indian restaurant with her lover and her daughter, presumably from, I don't think it wasn't his daughter, her daughter from a previous relationship. And she went outside for some reason, perhaps to smoke a cigarette or whatever. She got talking to a bloke outside. I don't know, perhaps he was smoking a cigarette. They went down an alleyway and had sex, just like that. There's no suggestion of her being a prostitute. She went back in the restaurant. I think it's just because the staff were laughing at her. Somebody saw what happened. And she dialed 999. The police turned up. She's probably still eating a chicken madras. Wasn't that bothered. There's no mention of a medical examination. The following afternoon, she makes a statement. She says she was attacked by an Asian man, and this resulted in the arrest of a member of the restaurant staff. The poor bloke was totally innocent, and in spite of that, he was sacked. The police put out an appeal on local radio, and a guy came forward and was arrested, and he said, no, it was consensual. We went down an alleyway and had sex. They went back, re-interviewed her, and she admitted she'd lied. Now, what if she hadn't admitted it? What if a year or two later, if this guy hadn't heard the radio, or if he hadn't come forward, a year or two later, he's arrested for some trivial offence, God forbid, not a sexual offence. His DNA is run through a database, and they say what happened. Well, who's going to believe him? What juror will believe that? I've seen a lot putting together this timeline, but I would find that very difficult to believe. This is why, as I say, an allegation from a reasonably intelligent, educated woman that is not made promptly, normally as soon as practicable, deserves to be treated with contempt. All this bunk about shock and trauma. This is something that curiously applies only to sexual offences. We can all be traumatised, and sometimes fairly trivial things traumatise us. But the idea that trauma causes delay and I just froze, and this is compounded with a delay, and the survivor comes forward showing great courage, fearing she won't be believed. This is all bunk. This is all feminist propaganda, rape crisis centre propaganda, and has absolutely zero credibility. The really shocking thing is that these lies are being peddled. They're being peddled now by academics as well, including one bloke I won't name here, but I'm going to publish something about him in due course. And lawyers are being indoctrinated, but even at times police officers, cynical police officers. And we have to stop this. We need to bring a statute of limitations for all such allegations, and we need to restore due process. We have to stop this Me Too nonsense. Anybody like to ask me anything, or I can just ramble on? There's still only 5 of us. Well, 6 of us. 5 watching. Anybody like to say anything? Any questions? No, it's incredibly disappointing. I've done a bit more work on the full soap timeline. I will probably add something about Kavanagh in due course. You may have seen that sleazy porn lawyer Martin Avenatti has been it's been taken in by someone who sent him an email claiming that Kavanagh and a couple of others were drugging and gang raping women at college. He's been given widespread publicity. The other thing I'll mention is the conviction, the sentencing rather, of Bill Cosby. I have little, if any, sympathy with Cosby, but clearly there was case for reasonable doubt with Constand, and all the other women are lying, basically. They're lying, or they're, in the case of Tarshish, not right in the head. A couple of others are not right in the head as well. Really, it's disgraceful the way Gloria Allred was allowed to the way Gloria Allred was allowed to create this bandwagon of false accusers. We haven't heard quite so much from her since the Roy Moore case, in particular when his accuser, Beverly Nelson Young, was exposed as fabricating part of the so-called evidence against him. Really, Allred should be disbarred, and I think she should face some sort of criminal prosecution. A lawyer would never be permitted to do that in the UK. Should be struck off. Anybody got anything to say? No? I was expecting hoping for a bigger turnout tonight. No. Oh, I just realised that the number of people viewing is at the top of this screen as well. Nobody got anything to say? Okay, shall I waffle on a bit more? Let's discuss rape trauma syndrome. I can find it. Yeah, rape trauma syndrome is a fallacious concept, one that is used along with this "I just froze" rubbish to bolster allegedly delayed reports of rape. I've got the original research on the timeline. I'll find it. There's the original article which I dug out from the American Journal of Psychiatry, published in 1974, September 1974. Quality of scan leaves a much to be desired, but it's certainly legible, even by me, and my eyes are not what they used to be. Basically, what happened was that Ann Burgess and her collaborator went to a Birmingham hospital, a Boston hospital, presumably a major hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. And over a 365-day period, they interviewed every person, every woman, girl, and I think maybe some children, who was presented and had been claimed to have been sexually violated. Of these, 96, I think it was 96 were deemed to be forcible rapes. They interviewed them, and they did a follow-up interview, and I think it was another one as well. And they asked these women how they felt. Well, it's a dumb question. If you'd been raped or beaten up or both, you'd feel pretty bad. And these women exhibited a variety of symptoms, allegedly down to the rape. Some of them moved out of state. Some of them changed their telephone numbers. I'm not yawning at you. Some of them changed their telephone numbers. Some did this, that, and the other. And really, there was no pattern to what they did. So Burgess and her collaborator came up with a long list of symptoms which they labelled rape trauma syndrome. They had 3 phases. I think there were 4 phases of it now. And I mean, the physical symptoms are non-controversial, bruising, soreness, that sort of thing. But the other symptoms, you can't. They try to use this. They still try to use this either as a diagnostic tool in one case, or proof from a woman's behaviour that she's been raped. Well, this doesn't cut any ice at all. The example I always use is of not of a rape, but if you're in the UK, or perhaps even if you aren't, you may remember the murder of Sarah Payne, who was an angelic 8-year-old. She was murdered in September 2000, I think it was. Massive, started as a missing child hunt, and it soon became a murder hunt. They found her body. She was murdered by a paedophile named Roy Whiting. What happened was Sarah Payne's mother, Sarah, you would expect her to have been more distraught, more affected than Sarah's father. But not such, he wasn't extremely distraught, but she recovered. I mean, well, she doesn't think about her daughter every day, but she recovered well, and she became a campaigner. She got letters after her name now. Excuse me, I had a long day. I'm keeping strange hours as usual. But Sarah's father, Michael Payne, he reacted very differently. He blamed himself for not being able to protect his daughter. He began drinking. He became violent. He assaulted. He became sort of a wife beater, or whatever. His wife divorced him. He started doing silly things, senseless acts of criminal damage. He attacked his own brother, hit him with a glass, I think a glass in the face, and did a prison sentence for that. And I think it was 2014. A while ago, he was found dead in his home. The consensus is that it was slow motion suicide. He didn't actually commit suicide, but it was suicide by proxy. Now, you take those sort of things, those two, you can't say that, you can't look at the behaviour of this man and say his daughter was murdered, any more than you can look at the behaviour of his wife and now his ex-wife and say that, and whatever trauma she may have, you can't deduce from her behaviour what the tragic event in her life. Give you an example. I remember this. In 1993, there was a young girl in Bradford, Roxana Khan, I think her name was. She was attacked by a dog that nearly ripped off her face. One of these devil dogs. If a couple of people hadn't intervened, it would almost certainly have killed her. She was 6 years old at the time. And about, I think, probably the 20th anniversary of the attack. Oh, excuse me. She was now a young woman. Her face looked okay to me. Now scars it. She gave an interview to a local rag. She said she was still terrified of dogs, which is understandable. But you can't look at a woman's behaviour around dogs, or her professed fear of dogs, and say that she was a victim of a dog attack. It may be anything. She may have been attacked by a dog. She may have seen someone attacked by a dog. She may have seen a dog run over by a car. She may have seen a dog barking loudly on a film. It may be just something genetic, something in her makeup that she doesn't like dogs. And what they try to do, what they try to do with rape trauma syndrome, is they use this to explain away the behaviour of women who accuse men of rape late in the day. And almost any behaviour, you can read my analysis on the website. I wrote an article about it as well, the fallacy of rape trauma syndrome. Demosthenes Larandos, the American attorney, has done some fantastic work on this sort of nonsense, and he's debunked it as well. And they use it to explain away delay, and also to the claim that there's the hidden rape victims around there who they advise doctors to look out for these women who are traumatized. They've been raped, they're traumatized, but they don't express it. This is a way of affirming a rape happened, whatever. So if a woman claims to have been raped 6 months ago, and she's still dating the guy 3 months ago, that's perfectly, this is the way rape victims behave, notwithstanding the blurb you'll find on the websites of rape crisis centres, that rape is a terrifying ordeal no woman wants to go through. With the Cosby second trial, they brought in an airhead called Barbara Ziv, who indoctrinated the jury with this claptrap. Well, I'm sorry, but if Constant really had been sexually violated by Cosby like that. As Jay Raskin said, she was 6'1" tall, a former basketball player and incredibly strong. If that had happened, she'd have gone to the police and probably have put Cosby in hospital first. So there was no reason for anybody to be taken in by this rape trauma syndrome rubbish, nor by any of this delay. Now, obviously, it isn't that simple, because if you have children, if you have women who are not so bright, if as in the Holtzclaw case, you have in Oklahoma City, you have women who are on the fringes of dealing in drugs, etc., and prostitution. Prostitution is illegal in America, except every state except Nevada. It's possible that a woman there from that background would not report a rape, certainly from a police officer. But what happened to Holtzclaw when his bestial nature got the better of him, and he attacked an ordinary woman, Janie Liggins, a woman who was driving her own car, a woman who was not a prostitute, was not a drug dealer. She reported him at once, and that was the end of his reign. So there's no reason for anybody to take in this delayed rubbish and this survivor rubbish. The other thing I say is that women fight back. They almost always fight back, and sometimes a woman will get the better of it, notwithstanding the fact that, as a very general rule, men are stronger than women, and that, like all predators, sexual predators tend to attack those they perceive as weaker. Notwithstanding that, sometimes a woman will get the better of an attacker. Quite often, she'll be able to put up such resistance that he'll desist. Is afraid that other people will hear or come running or whatever. And if a woman does resist, then she's going to have bruising, torn clothing, maybe if the rape is successful, there will be internal bruising and lots of DNA and other evidence. And she reports promptly, and the guy will be brought to book. So there's no reason to believe these absurd rape statistics. No reason to believe any of this propaganda about rape being grossly underreported, or about women being afraid to report. What does happen is that women rewrite their sordid sexual experiences as rape, be those experiences consensual or imaginary. There's a very good example of this on the False Rape Timeline, the Rodney Anderson case, and there's about 5 minutes of video there of the assistant district attorney explaining exactly how his accuser rewrote this. She doesn't use those words, but how his accuser rewrote their sexual encounter as rape, and why the district attorney's office was not pressing ahead with charges. Right, we're down to 3 views. I don't believe some channels they have. I've got 180 subscribers. I'm 185 now. I've been emailing people like mad. I've got three of you watching. Anybody got any questions to ask? Martin? Anybody else? No. Well, I'm going to be adding a bit more to the timeline. I've reached 4,000 entries now, including everything, a few attempted rapes and real rapes and case law and stuff, and lots of articles. But there's over 4,000 entries. altogether there will be over 4,000, well over 4,000 false rape allegations. I'll write a few more over the next week or so. I don't know where to have the next hookup, next hangout Wednesday. Perhaps I should shift to the weekend. Anybody likes to? I would like some feedback on this. No. Okay, well, give it a few minutes, and anybody wants to ask any, if anybody does want to ask any questions, I'll endeavour to answer them. But saying that, it's another rather disappointing night. But thank you for coming anyway. Those of you who are still here, and those of you who have gone. I think that this whole Me Too nonsense now is almost every celebrity in the world, any celebrity, any business person will be, another couple of years, will have been the victim of some bizarre false allegation. A few people I'm surprised haven't been accused yet. Richard Branson, I'm surprised he hasn't been accused, or doesn't appear to have been accused, but give it time. I hope I'm not putting ideas in anyone's tiny head. It's just this idea of as I said before, you've got 1 billion people have access to YouTube has 1 billion subscribers. That's just YouTube. A substantial percentage of the planet is online, and leaving aside people who are, you've got mischief makers, you've got trollers, you've got basically any man who's a woman or a man has taken umbrage at is now fair game to be the victim of rumour, innuendo, and at times far worse. You see what the Democrats have tried to do with this Kavanaugh case. Have tried to provoke other accusers into coming forward. Hasn't happened much yet, but this is what happened with the Bill Cosby case. It's absolutely disgraceful, but I don't see any way of stopping such allegations. But we need statutes of limitations, and we need proven false accusers to be punished, and punished severely. And if a few women start getting 5 and 10 year sentences for false allegations, I think then we'll see a lot fewer of them. I don't subscribe to this bunk about women being discouraged from reporting. Right. There were a couple of other questions I wanted to ask of technical nature, but I'll leave. I may leave this hangout until Friday or Saturday of next week. The next one. See if I can drum up a bit more of an audience. But my main task at the moment is to keep expanding. Well, I've got other things to do. I've got work to do as well. But my main task in this field is to keep adding cases to the false rape timeline. Right. We've been on there nearly 40 minutes. I could have kept going for an hour, 2 hours, but doesn't seem a lot of point. So one more. Any of you got any questions? No? Right. Well, if any of you do have any questions, feel free to email me either through Google. Leave a comment on the video if you want, or my main email. My email address. I'm easy to find, and I'll keep building the timeline and hope that, unlike Cassandra, I won't continue to be ignored. All right. Thank you very much for coming. Those of you who did, those of you who are still here, those of you who are not. and I'll hopefully see you again in the near future.